Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson with you here, recapping the NCAA Tournament, and also have a lot of topics that we've been kind of pushing off, Jeff. I think we mentioned it quite a few times. Hey, we're going to save this till the end of the year. And here we are, end of the year. High school wrestling is all, we've gotten through the season. We've gotten through the state tournament. We got the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic coming up on Friday night, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to preview that, but just other topics as well. We got a fun show for everybody.
I mean, it's a fun-packed show. We have been holding off on talking about some of these topics for a while, and I think now is a perfect time. As you said, the season has quote ended, even though it doesn't feel like it ended quite yet. I mean, it's still there's still a lot of stuff going on and a lot of good wrestling still happening. Just the scholastic season has completed. But we have a lot of good stuff to go over, and I'm excited for the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic on Friday. It's gonna be a great turn event, and I'm just looking forward to it.
So you look at before we get into that, the wrestling that did just finish up on the collegiate scene. I know we don't get a chance to talk a lot about it, other than hey, here's the high school wrestlers going to college, right? And here's the
Right.
colleges they're going to, but we never really talk about where they're at post high school and how they're doing. And obviously, we got a chance to see that here this past weekend. Pennsylvania in total had 45 qualifiers in the NCAA tournament. And out of that, for the WPIAL, we had 15 wrestlers who wrestled on the big stage. I would say, overall, Jeff, obviously we had a lot of great talent there for the WPIAL, but coming away with two All-Americans definitely was probably a tough pill to swallow. Um, Five of those guys losing in the blood round. So five of those guys not being able to get back to All-American status, or getting to All-American status, I should say. Two guys NCAA finals a year ago losing in the blood round, Jake Wentzel and Nino Bonacorsi. But overall for the WPIAL, two guys being able to become All-Americans. Michael Kemmerer of Iowa finishes his career, getting a fourth All-American status, and then Greg Bulsack of Rutgers, wrestler for South Park, he finishes in 8th place.
I mean, I someone asked me that, and they said, what are your feelings on Pennsylvania? And I'm like, well, coming into it, we knew the 45 guys that were there. We were so spoiled, I think, in the last 5 to 10 years with just the amount of talent was just incredible, right? You have Spencer Lee, you have Vincenzo Joseph, you have the guy Jason Nolf, those guys that are just always putting up bonus points or always winning big matches. And I feel like this year was kind of like a wake up. Now, PA still led the nation in number of qualifiers and the amount of All-Americans. We still led the nation there, so we can't be upset about that. I think what burns the most are those 5 guys that lost in the blood round, and 4 of them were All-Americans a year prior. So you had Jake Wentzel, who was a runner-up last year. You had Ethan Smith, who was an All-American last year. Nino Bonacorsi, as you mentioned, national finalist last year. And Jake Woodley, who made it to the semifinals last year. So all those wrestlers had great tournaments. They all just fell up a little bit short. Mickey Philippi, that stings. Mickey's been so close so many times before, and he just wasn't able to get it done. I mean, the NCAA tournament is really, really freaking tough, and that showed. Michael Kemmerer, I mean, he was put together by duct tape, and I got to talk to him a little bit after the 3rd and 4th place match, and he's all heart, man. He's all heart, and I think he was happy to come away with an All-American finish, but definitely wanted to probably be back in the finals there. Greg Bulsack, a guy who many people probably didn't think was going to get onto the podium. He found a way to get into the top 8, finishing 8th. I think for a guy like Greg, who's been at Clarion, was now at Rutgers, he's had a good season thus far. I think that's a good finish for him. But as you mentioned, Greg, I mean, you look at all the guys from the WPIAL, 15 of them, and we had some young guys. Garrett Ninehouse was there. Zach Hartman was returning All-American, did not All-American this year. You had guys like Luke Stout, who I think is close, but still needs a little bit more to get him over the hump. So I hate to say disappointed, because I'm not disappointed, but when you lose 5 in the blood round, when you're saying that 12 could be a 17, that's a huge, right? And that's only considering the WPIAL guys that lost in the blood round. We lost 10 overall from the state of Pennsylvania. So that's a little, from a guy who represents PA Power Wrestling, it's a little depressing when that number could have been significantly more had a couple guys got wins on that blood round.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree with you completely. And the future is still definitely bright. I mean, although you lose Michael Kemmer, you lose Greg Bulsack, heck, you even lose those guys that lost in the blood round, right? As far as from District 7. But you got a lot of guys who, like you mentioned, were eliminated but had good tournaments. And then obviously these guys coming up are going to be outstanding as well. In Pennsylvania as a whole, too, I think, maybe a little bit of a disappointment because of the fact, not being able to, outside of Carter Starachi, not being able to have another NCAA champion, right? But there's only 10 of them. So the fact that Pennsylvania has one of the 10 is still saying something.
No, it definitely is. I think we were spoiled, though, because for many years when I was at the NCAA tournament, Pennsylvania would have 10 finalists, six or seven finalists, and 4 of them would be champions, right? I mean, I can remember being in Cleveland. I forget how many we had. We had 4 or 5, national champions. We had Spencer, Vincenzo, Zane,
Nolf.
Jason, Nolf, right? And that's I think we got a little spoiled, and obviously guys like Luke Pletcher in the mix as well. Those guys were always battling on Saturday at the NCAA tournament. So to not have as many guys in was a little disappointing, but the future's bright. And again, the NCAA tournament is very, very tough. These guys, we're always saying how we're the best, but other states and other wrestlers, they're pretty darn good too, and we're starting to see a lot more parity within the NCAA. But Pennsylvania wrestling still at the top, number 1 in number of qualifiers and in All-American. So that we can't be up. When we lose that, then we'll ring the we'll sound the alarms, if you will.
No doubt about it. Well, looking ahead, Jeff, we'll see how many of the Pennsylvania and WPIAL wrestlers who will be wrestling on Friday will be able to get on the podium and become All-Americans themselves. When you look at these two teams, I know we announced the teams in last week's show, but you look at the guys on both sides. As far as just kind of looking at, let's start with the Pennsylvania team and work our way down to the WPIAL. I guess, obviously, what kind of debates were going on in the room? Which weight classes? I mean, I think there's no-brainers, right? You got Jackson Arrington, getting Levi Haynes to come in, Nick Feldman, Dayton Pitzer, Max Stout, like some pretty no-brainers as far as choices go. But which ones were the debates, and which ones were guys that, they had to go back and forth on as a committee?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. As a committee, we're always trying to put the best team forward, right? And that's USA and PA. We want the best guys in the nation, and we want the best guys and girls in Pennsylvania competing. There's no doubt about it. But the area where it's tough is with Team Pennsylvania's, most of these states that we pick the USA team, they're already completed their state tournament. We're sending out those bids pretty early in the process. So the USA team is, I wouldn't say easier, but we have a lot more time to make decisions and have those debates. Whereas the Pennsylvania team, I mean, from the state tournament to the classic, there's not a lot of time, right? We got to get airfare, we got to get gear, we got to get all this stuff together. So it's hard to really spend a lot of time going back and forth. So we do a lot of debating pre the state tournament to kind of see where we're looking at, and it helps when we have kind of locks, if I'll use that term, guys like Jackson Arrington, guys like Dayton Pitzer and Nick Feldman, who we had a pretty good understanding that we were going to pick them. Same with 195 with Max Stout and Sonny Sasso. We were pretty confident we were going to pick Max Stout at 195 pounds. Simply because he's a nationally ranked guy. Sonny Sasso is right there in the mix. And he had a win over Kutchember. He was a state runner-up as a sophomore. So guys like that, we don't really have to debate a whole lot. 45, that was a little bit of a debate. We talk about Ty Waters being a junior, but, Jude Swisher and Finn Solomon, they have a head-to-head, but Finn's a 3-time state finalist. one-time champion. We kind of look at that and say body of work. So a lot of times we'll go back to the body of work. Sometimes guys have bad weekends. Jacob Van D didn't wrestle the best state tournament he had at 126 pounds, but body of work wise, I mean, he's right in the mix. 2-time state finalist, 1-time champion. He's going to Nebraska. He's been a guy who's been in national rankings. So, there's debates about that. 38, we were looking for Ryan Crookham, weren't able to secure that and lock that in. So Briar Priest is our guy. And there's a lot of guys that can float between whether we're going to put them on the WPIAL team or the Pennsylvania team. The one this year that a lot of people have something to say about is Levi Haynes. A lot of people have I heard say, well, he didn't wrestle in his senior year, so he shouldn't be considered. And that's just not how we look at it. We're looking at the best wrestlers in the state of Pennsylvania. We looked at Kyle Snyder when he forewent his senior year and went to the Olympic Trainer Center. We still had him on Team USA. Levi Haynes is the number 1 ranked guy in the nation at 160 pounds. He's from the state of Pennsylvania and he wanted to wrestle. That's it, right? I mean, that's not a dig or a disrespect to Jared Kessler, because Jared Kessler is really, really tough and really good, and he wrestled his senior year and he got a state title. But we're talking about Levi Haynes. We're talking about a guy who's one of the best in the nation, who was a world team member this past summer. If he's gonna wrestle, if he wants to wrestle, he's our choice. And then you go into the difference between prep, Malvern Prep, Wyoming Seminary versus PIAA schools and wrestlers, and that's a whole nother issue in itself, or debate in itself. But I can tell you this, Greg, it's a lot of dissecting, a lot of talking, a lot of bouncing back and forth, and there's a lot of explaining to do. So regardless, we're never going to make everybody happy, but at the end of the day, our goal is to put the best team forward. We want to win. I mean, we want to win. Pennsylvania, we want Pennsylvania to win, but we also want them to beat the best team in the nation. So there's just a lot of things that go on behind the scenes for the Classic committee and us picking the team.
So I guess 2 questions coming out of that, explanation is that you mentioned Levi Haynes is there. Another guy who wasn't able to wrestle his senior season, Eric Gibson, was he considered? And the other question would be, I guess the 1 weak spot you could look at might be at 170, Nolan Lear of Benton. Not that he's a bad wrestler, right? Very good wrestler, very accomplished, deserving of being on a team. But when you talk about Jared Kessler, was there a debate about maybe putting Haynes or Kessler at 170? Because both guys really have earned their way to the PA team.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely in the mix. That was definitely in the discussions. The one thing that we had trouble with is with weight wise, bringing somebody up or taking someone down, it just can get a little dicey. So we give 5 pounds for the weight. So 152 would be 157, 160 is 165. So now we're talking about a 175 pounder coming in and wrestling one of the best in the nation who's giving up weight. Like Jared Kessler, weighing 162 at the state tournament, now gets to go up to 175 and wrestle the number 1 guy in the nation. So it's a little bit, it's a touchy subject. We try to not move guys around so much, but there was discussions about that. 100%, there was discussions about whether we would, Nolan Lear is not a state champion. He is, when you look at the guys on this team for Team Pennsylvania, there's only a handful that aren't state champions. Mason Leaphart's one of them. You look at Nolan Lear as the other one, and Maxed Out is the third one. So, those are the guys that don't have state championships, but Maxed Out comes ranked number 9 in the nation. Those are debates that certainly happen about 170 and looking at, are we going to bring somebody up? And to be honest with you, Levi Haynes wanted 1 guy and 1 guy only, and that was Aiden Riggins from Iowa. So it was 160 or bust for us at 160, because he wanted to wrestle Aiden Riggins, who he'd wrestled before. So that wasn't an option there. And then, of course, there's always the option between 113 and 120. We used to have a 113. a couple years ago, we've had multiple weights. So if we have two really good guys at one weight class, maybe we're going to put two 182s or two 195s out there. But there's always debates about, do we bring someone up from 13 to 20? So Mason Leapart from Dover, it was our choice at 120, but there was discussions about, are we going to bring Gavin Bradley up, who was a state champion at 113? Those are always debates that we have, and ultimately this is the team that we put together and put out. So there's just a lot that goes on, right? There's a lot that goes on, and there isn't one. It's a majority type thing. There's not, if I say one thing, it's not gonna all right, Jeff says it, so that's it.
Come on, that's how you like things, doesn't it?
No, that's absolutely not. I mean, because look, I have my own biases. I certainly think that maybe some guys are better than the other, and that's the other thing. Like, people think that this is how should I put it? Well, this guy deserves to be on the team. This guy deserves, they've earned that spot. And to be honest with you, it's not about, if you go undefeated, right? Look at the USA team. There's a lot of guys here that are undefeated state champions that aren't even in the, contention to be picked, because, this other person is going to Super 32. They're going to Fargo. They're state champions. They're world team members. So we want the best of the best, and that goes for USA and PA. And we don't get it right all the time. There's some times where we're like, man, maybe we should have done that. Maybe we could have done that. But at the end of the day, we have a handful of people that have been involved in the sport for many, many, many years, and been doing, things, working with the Classic for for as long as I've been alive, longer than I've been alive. I'm okay with leaning on some other folks, and it's at the end of the day, we put the best team forward, and I'm pretty excited about this team from Pennsylvania for sure.
Yeah, the other question I mentioned, Jeff, Eric Gibson, was he considered?
Yeah, no, he was definitely considered. I know Eric pretty well. He's definitely one of my favorites. Just getting to know him over the last 4 years. He was a champion at the Surge as a freshman. So was Jared Kessler. That was our first year of the Surge.
Yeah,
was
4
years ago, right? And I feel like that's always going to have a special place in my heart, because Eric Gibson won it as a freshman, and Jared Kessler kind of came out of nowhere. We knew he was tough, but he beat some pretty standout guys to win a title. So I'm always impartial to guys that I get to see and get to know on a personal level. And Eric's been on a lot of our cards before, so yeah, Eric was definitely considered. But if I'm being honest, Levi Haynes, it was his spot, right? If he would say no, or say, hey, I'm injured and I can't, then we'd go down the line.
Yeah.
So we kind of have a depth chart, if you will, but that all can change on Saturday at the state tournament. So a lot of times there's upsets. A lot of times there's people that we're thinking is going to win, and we sometimes have to go back after Saturday and say, well, this just threw a wrench into it. This guy lost, but this guy won. Especially between AA and AAA. How do you compare a AAA champion to a AA champion, especially if they haven't met head to head? You look at common opponents. You look at a variety of factors, and then you add the prep guys in, like Malvern Prep, Jack Waymeyer. We don't have a 182 weight class in Pennsylvania. That's, in PIAA weight classes, we don't have it. So that was kind of like a no-brainer. And Jack was a guy who was a Powerade champion, and that's always a benefit when we have guys that come out to the Powerade, and we get to, because we're obviously based out in the western part of Pennsylvania, but it helps when we get to see those guys in person, especially competing in a tournament like Powerade.
Well, you look at the Pennsylvania team, Jeff, and obviously against the United States team. What matchups are you looking forward to? How do you see this all shaking out? I know we have one rematch of a Powerade final with Dayton Pitzer. He'll be taking on TJ Stewart, and that was a great matchup that went to overtime. What are some of these other matchups that you're excited for?
Yeah, so if I'm, again, being honest, Pennsylvania is going to have a tall task here. We don't, we want to win, but we don't make it easy on them. That's for damn sure. We definitely don't make it a weak team. And I'm excited for a lot of different matches. Obviously, 160, Levi Haynes, Aiden Riggins. That match, if you go back and watch that match from the junior world team cadet world team trials, those two went back and forth. They went into a third match, and Levi Haynes was able to win that and make it the world team. But Riggins was right there. One's going to Penn State, one's going to Iowa. So that's, we always like that. I can remember when Carter Starocki wrestled Abe Assad, and that was the final match of the night. And, Carter's now a 2-time national champion for Penn State. Abe Assad has been in and out of the lineup, been close. But, that's a match that we're always going to remember because, just having guys that go to Penn State and Iowa is always adds a little bit of intrigue. So that 160 is definitely one that I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to the rematch between Dayton Pitzer and TJ Stewart. Pitzer that was his closest match of the year, no doubt.
His only close match of the year.
His only close match. Let's be honest. It was the only close match of the year. TJ Stewart is, he's a guy who's been really, really good for a really long time. He was a NHSCA freshman national champion. He was third in national preps. He was a Fargo national champion, both junior and cadet. But he got big. He went from like 182 to 220 in a matter of a couple of months, I feel like. And he's a big boy. So he's going to Virginia Tech. So it's an ACC battle between a Pitt and a Virginia Tech wrestler here. I'm not sure where TJ is going to go in college. I think Dayton is planning to go heavyweight. So
yep.
This could have a lot of, prelude to what's to come. So I like that match, even though it's a rematch, but I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these guys like Jesse Mendez from Team USA at 138 pounds, him and Briar Priest. That should be a really good match. Briar's a guy who nationally doesn't get a ton of attention, and that may be a little unfair to him because he does have a state championship and he was in tiebreaker with Pearson Manville. And Pearson Manville beat Tyler Kasak, who's one of the best wrestlers in the nation. So I think when you look at it, people say, well, Jesse Mendez is number one in the nation. Briar Priest doesn't even come in ranked. Well, I think that's going to change. I think Briar Priest is going to be right there with him. So I'm excited to see that one at 138. I'm excited to see Max Stout. To be honest with you, Max Stout had a tough end to a season, right? And he comes in looking to take out the number 2 guy in the nation, Rylan Rogers, who spent some time at Blair Academy. He's going to Michigan. So we got a Michigan Pitt battle here. Rylan Rogers lost to Lenny Pinto at Who's Number 1. Max Stout lost to Lenny Pinto in the state finals as a sophomore. So it's kind of cool. There's a little bit of connection there between these two, Rylan Rogers and Max Stout. There's a lot of backstories to a lot of these different matches. Isabella Muir from who's going to Iowa, her father, Frank Muir, who many of you probably know because he was a UFC heavyweight champion. And that's his daughter, and she's a stud. She's going to Iowa. She's going to be wrestling Grace Stem, who's from Baltimore area, going to Lock Haven. That's a number 3 versus number 5 in the nation. And then, of course, Jackson Arrington. Jackson Arrington comes in ranked number 2 in the nation. He's going against Hunter Garvin from Iowa, who's going to Stanford. I know people are really high on Hunter Garvin. So when you look at the numbers on paper, Pennsylvania's favored in a few matches. 160 they're favored at, 152 they're favored at, 220 they're favored at, and heavyweight they're favored at because you have Nick Feldman, who's pound for pound the best wrestler in the nation. So, we have a fighting chance. But then there's always somebody that's going to surprise you from Team PA, whether that's Jacob Van D. And let's not forget Brandon Kletos from Notre Dame GP, a guy who's been in the national rankings before. He's wrestling number 4 Zeke Seltzer, who's going to Missouri. He's a 3-time Indiana state champion, 3-time Fargo All-American, and he's placed 3 times at the Super 32. So, he's got a lot of talent to his name. But Kletos is a guy who can certainly be in that match. I definitely think he can be in that match. I think Finn Solomon can be in the match with Caleb Larkin, who's going to Arizona State. This is a kind of a weird connection as well. Caleb Larkin is the son of 4-time All-American and national champ Eric Larkin. Many of you probably remember him as winning the Dan Hodge Trophy back in the 90s, and his son Caleb is going to Arizona State. Obviously, that's a really good one. I just something's going to surprise you though. That's always the case. Something always comes out and surprises you. it's if USA can get bonus points, if Matt Singleton can get bonus points on Nolan Lear, that's a big boost to their lineup and then their team score. So again, a lot can happen, but I feel pretty good. But at the same time, I'm cautious because Team USA is so damn good. All things have to go right for Team Pennsylvania.
And let's not forget about the girls matchup, Jeff. What favorites there as well with Grace Stem.
Yeah, and Grace Stem, as I mentioned, she comes in number 3. She's going to Lock Haven. I'm really looking forward to seeing her go against Isabel Amir, who's going to Iowa. She was just a couple weeks ago, actually. She was a girls folk style USA national champion. She was down 8-0 in those finals and stormed back to win a title there. So I love this match. Last year we had Adrena Turner and Montana DeLauder go at it, and Montana DeLauder got a fall, which ended up securing, even though it was the first match, it ended up being the difference in the match, and Pennsylvania ended up winning that. A weird year with COVID, right? And that was the first year we had a girls match that counted towards the team points, which was a very huge step forward for us in Pennsylvania. This one as well, between Isabel Amir and Grace Stem, is going to count towards the team score. So, that's big. That's a big match there. And Montana DeLauder was able to be tough on top. She's used to wrestling boys, and she came out and got a fall over Turner. So, yeah, I'm excited to see the girls mix it up, and hopefully in the future we get to see more than just one match on that card.
When you look down at the first matchup before you get into that PA versus USA, Jeff, you look at the WPIAL team, and boy, I mean, you look at that team and you're like, man, this team is may not quite be as good on the national scene, but it is pretty darn good. And you look at all the guys that the WPIAL will bring out. How do you see this matchup going? And I guess the other question, what challenges did you have with putting this team together?
Yeah, I mean, the WPIAL teams, it's not too hard to put together as compared to the Pennsylvania team. And the reason for that is a lot of these guys have seen each other. A lot of these guys are familiar with each other. They've wrestled each other. They've wrestled in the same tournaments. So, and we just have a better sense of who's the guy here, right? We're pulling from one district as opposed to an entire state. So it's a little bit easier to pick. There are obviously challenges, and moving guys around a little bit. Colton Stone King's a 38-pounder wrestling 132. Jared Kessler, he's wrestling up a weight class, Jack Pletcher's wrestling down a weight class. So there's a few that we had some question marks around, but overall the WPIAL team is stacked. They're very, very good, and no disrespect to Indiana, but the WPIAL team is probably going to do some damage, in my opinion. I think they're so tough because of the guys that you have on the lineup, like Troy Homan, who's going to NC State, Xander Fatoris going to Campbell, Colton Stone King, George Mason. Jack Pletcher had the best tournament of his career at the state tournament. Kellen Laffey, Jared Kessler, Logan Hoffman, Patrick Kutchember, Brian Finnerty, Cole Waitman, Billy McChesney. I mean, these guys are all Division I recruits, Division I commits. Logan Hoffman is undecided. Cole Waitman's going to IUP for football, and Ambrose Bonai is uncommitted. Everyone else, Division I recruit. Indiana, they have a good team, right? They're led by a couple guys that are going to Division I schools. Jay Conway at 160, he's going to Missouri, and the Citadel is going to get Hayden Watson at 145. So, I'm looking forward to Jay Conway versus Jared Kessler. But overall, the WPIAL teams, they're really, really good. And that's even considering you look at Team Pennsylvania and the WPIAL guys on that team, right? I mean, there's not a ton, but there's a pretty good amount. Briar Priest, Finn Solomon, and Max Stout, Dayton Pitzer. Those are guys that, you put them on the WPIAL team and it's game over. Don't even show up. But yeah, it's going to be fun. Indiana's going to come to wrestle, man. They've always been really good when they made the trip out to Pittsburgh, so I'm looking forward to seeing them. They always bring a good crowd. They always bring a lot of friends and family, so there should be a really good atmosphere inside Peters Township which is another topic of discussion, Greg, is why we're at Peters Township.
And tell us why, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, it's scheduling, man. It's hard. It's hard when
Yeah.
you're trying to schedule events to host at a college campus, and unfortunately, our window is very small. In fact, we don't really have much of a window. It's this date or not, right? So the Pennsylvania State Tournament, NCAA National Tournament, those two are always contingent on when we have the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic. Pennsylvania is historically one of the last states to have a state tournament that weekend. There's not a state that has a state tournament past the time when Pennsylvania does, which makes it easier for us because most guys we already know who the top guys are in the nation, so those guys are already selected. But for us, we have a couple dates, right? We have Friday, Saturday, and Sundays that we're really looking at for the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic. We're not having it on Thursday or Wednesday. We're going to have it on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, preferably a Friday or Saturday. Obviously, our preference is the Pittsburgh, the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, no doubt. We've been there for years. It's a great venue. Pitt's been really good to us over the years, but it just couldn't work out this year where we couldn't get it on one of those dates for a number of reasons. So we had to pick a backup, right? We're not going to just not host it, or we're not going to push it back a week. The further you go away from the season, the harder it is to get these guys to commit. So our date has to be pretty locked in and secured before, we start looking at some venues, because it's, again, the National High School Coaches Association Nationals is this weekend. You're already getting into freestyle, in the starting next couple weeks here. So we have to do it sooner rather than later. So we're kind of pitch and hold a little bit into a date, and it just turns out that, Pitt couldn't accommodate us on those dates. So we had to think of a backup plan and go to a backup location. And to tell you the truth, Greg, Peters Township, I mean, I think people are going to be completely blown away by the atmosphere and the environment. We're going to have a little bit more of a different setup this year with how the wrestlers are introduced and how they're coming out. It's going to be a lot of fun. You were at Peters Township before, right, Greg?
Yeah, a couple tournaments there.
It's a beautiful location. I mean, it's brand new. It's pretty huge. It's going to be a lot of fun. I don't think fans are going to be disappointed. Obviously, the field house is just historic. It's legendary, but for an alternative, this isn't a bad option. So we're really excited to have it here. People say, well, it's at a high school. That's not this event deserves to be in a bigger venue, and maybe they're right. But at the end of the day, what are we going to do, right? You try putting on an event and then come talk to me about what you're going to do, because a lot of people like to talk on Twitter, but a lot of times they don't have any understanding or fathom how it is to put together an event, especially of this caliber and this nature. So, and of course this isn't just it's not like the wrestlers just come in and wrestle. This is a week. I mean, I'm leaving tomorrow night to go start getting ready for this. I mean, we set up at the hotel. We have a banquet. We have, interviews, press conferences. We have the whole 9 yards, so this is more than just, hey, you show up and you wrestle. It's a lot more than just that. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and location is obviously one of them, but Peters Township, I think, is going to be a great venue for us. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
I think it's going to be a great venue for a dual meet like this, to showcase the guys who are on the mat wrestling center stage. You're not going to have three other mats going at the same time, because if that was the case, then maybe Peters Township isn't the right fit. But for what it's going to be, which is a dual meet and center stage for each wrestler wrestling, I think it's great. I think it's really almost, it replicates a lot of the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. Fitzgerald Fieldhouse will have great stands, on each side. This goes all the way around. I mean, and you can still stand up top if you'd like, just to be able to look down underneath. It's definitely a good atmosphere at Peters Township for a dual meet like this.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect until I saw the venue. I went there for the WPIAL AAA team tournament, and that was my first time in the school. and the arena, if you will. It's called the Allegheny Health Network Arena, and it's arena. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's a high school, but it certainly doesn't feel like it. It feels pretty big. And that's the first thing I noticed was the walkway around. It was huge, right? There was a ton of space. If fans want to stand up top, the seats are nice. We've got, we're going to have floor seats. There's 2 pretty large screens in there. One of our biggest things is, we survive off of sponsorship. This event does not happen if we don't have sponsors. And one thing that we do for our sponsors is highlight their material and highlight, all their stuff, right? And having a board like that is kind of critical to us. So we have 2 screens. It's going to be fun, man. They're going to have people kind of on top of each other a little bit. It's going to be a tight environment. It's going to be packed, especially after last year having it in a hotel. Look, we held the Classic in a hotel last year because of COVID. Don't give me that, bull crap about, well, you're not going back to Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. Well, you know what? We were in a hotel last year. We're doing just fine. We're doing just fine. You're going to have plenty of parking. You're going to have, easy access to different places in the area. So, obviously I'm going to say it's a good location. We'll find out. We're going to find out. It probably isn't going to be perfect, but no venue is perfect.
6 o'clock will be the WPIAL matchup. 8 o'clock for the Pennsylvania matchup, again at Peters Township. So make sure you make your way there if you're able to. It's going to be a lot of fun. Jeff, next topic that we wanted to kind of cover before we get into the WPIAL losing a qualifier in AAA, which I think is the biggest topic we definitely want to cover. First, we got the realignment that happened in AAA and AA. A lot of teams shifting from AAA down to AA. So instead of having your favorite subsections, they're now just going to have 6 sections that'll take place in both AAA and AA. So AA will bring back the individual section tournament, but essentially how it's going to work with the 6 sections on each side is that in both AAA and AA, they'll combine sections 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6 to create 3 sectional qualifiers. The Northern, Southern, and Eastern, and the top 6 wrestlers from each section will advance to the WPIAL individual tournament. Team-wise, the top 3 teams in each section will advance to the WPIAL tournament to make an 18-team bracket. So I guess first off, do you like this setup for the next 2 years for the WPIAL?
I had to do a welfare check on you after this came out because your beloved subsections are gone. I worried about you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure you were pretty disappointed at the fact that the subsections are gone, but something had to be done just because of the amount of teams that went down to Double-A, right? The field is now even essentially, so that allowed for an opening to do the shakeup, right? I think it makes sense. I won't necessarily say I agree with all of the sectional alignments. There's a few in there that I'm kind of curious about, but they're not a whole lot different than what we've seen previously when you look at the subsections, what they were the last 2 years versus now these next couple ones. So I don't think there's much change. The biggest thing that's going to change is now we have these combined sections that are going to be competing for a spot in the WPIAL tournament. So 6 from each section combined. So 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's a good number. And I think you're going to have some sections. I think they called them Northern, Southern, and Western. Does that sound right to you, Greg? I think that's what they
it's Northern, Southern, and Eastern are the 3.
Northern, Southern, and Eastern. So we're not going to call them section tournaments. We're going to call them, what are we going to call them?
Well, you'll have for the individual side, it'll be your Northern tournament, your Southern, and your Eastern, I guess.
Okay, so whatever that means, we're going to have that. I don't mind it. I don't have a problem with how it was kind of constructed and put together. I don't have an issue with that. I wonder about, are we going to potentially be leaving? I'm looking at more from a competition standpoint. Sections 1 and 2, Armstrong, Central Catholic, Fox Chapel, Kiski, Plum, and Shaler. then Section 2 is Butler, Mars, North Allegheny, North Hills, Pine Ridge, and Seneca Valley. That's a combined. I'm assuming that's northern, right? That's got to be northern. That's a good tournament. But then you have Section 3 and 4, Franklin Regional, Norwin, Penn Trafford, Ringgold, TJ, West Mifflin, and then Collinsville, Gateway, Latrobe, Hempfield, and McKeesport. That's a pretty stacked. That's a stacked tournament, right?
Yeah.
But we've seen that before. We've seen that before with the subsections and the sections. So I'm not too worried about it. You can't change the fact that Westmoreland County is doing really well right now, and you have teams like Hempfield and Latrobe that are doing really well, mixed in with Franklin Regional, Penn Trafford, Thomas Jefferson, who's going to be a force for next couple of years as well. So, I'm not mad at it, and I'm certainly not gonna throw shade at the way that it was put together. I think it's fine, and I think if it's not, it'll be changed in the next cycle anyways.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing you have to look at is the fact that you're going to get 6 wrestlers to advance to the WPIAL tournament. So, AA, I mean, I guess you could make the argument if you feel like you have 7 or 8 of the best guys all in one section because they take more to the Southwest Regional. But in AAA, when you only have 3, or if by some miracle the 4th comes back, you're still only taking 3 or 4. So you got to finish top 6 in your section. So if you can't finish top 6 in your section, you're sure as heck not going to get top 3 or 4 to go to the state tournament. So I don't mind it. I think there's enough qualifiers going to the individual WPIAL tournament to not have to, criticize, how the sections are aligned, especially too, you're also going to take the top 3 out of each section to go to the team tournament as well. So you're going to have, I mean, like you said, section 3 in AAA is probably the one where that's going to be a lot. That could be a dogfight, right? Franklin Regional, Norwin, Penn Trafford, Ringgold, TJ, and West Mifflin. I mean, that's going to be a dogfight to see who gets those top 3, but it's going to happen in one section or another. So to me, it's at the end of the day, I think it's pretty split pretty fairly as far as, where things stand as far as that goes. But you look at AAA, Jeff, and the talk is, and it looks like it's gonna get approved at the moment, is that the WPIAL will go from 4 to 3, and you look at the state tournament, not only this past year but years past, how many 4th place qualifiers from the WPIAL tournament placed top 8 in the state, and obviously it's all based on numbers. It's all based on number of schools, has nothing to do with competition, has nothing to do with the quality of the wrestling. Everything is just about purely numbers. That's how the PIAA does it. Is there any solution to be able to have the WPIAL? In reality, they should be getting 5, for the quality and how well they're doing. They should get 5 based purely on quality. Should be 5. But with that said, what is the possibilities of keeping that 4th?
Yeah, I mean, so we've gotta look at it through a specific lens. You said like 5 for quality, and while I will agree with you, that's 100% accurate. That ain't how the world works. That's not how the PIAA works. Unless you want to completely overthrow the PIAA and start your own state tournament and your own organization, state governing body, that's just not how it's gonna. That's not how it's gonna fly. Agreed. Or work. So you can kiss that goodbye, right? That's never gonna happen. And people say, well, why doesn't it? Because that's not the way it works. And again, like, tough shit. Like, that's just the way it is. But there are other avenues for the WPIAL, or I wouldn't even say the WPIAL, because it's a competitive balance. And the PIAA breaks their balance up through regions, right? You have your districts, you have your regions. So the only really, in my opinion, and this is the opinion of many people that are, have some influence in the state of Pennsylvania wrestling, is that the only feasible and truly realistic way to make this happen is a realignment of regions. So if you realign the regions, that will allow for more qualifiers from a specific area, which could encompass District 7, which is the WPIAL, right? So in AAA, we have 5 regions. In AA, we have 4. That 5th region throws a wrench into things when we're looking at number of qualifiers. So when we went from 16 to 20, things changed with how many numbers of guys we qualify, obviously. But it's not clean in AAA because we have those 5 regions. So population is dwindling, right, in the WPIAL. You can't argue that. I mean, that's just a fact. You look at the number of schools that have moved down from AAA to AA in the next cycle. We're losing numbers of just population as a whole. So the only really feasible way is to say, okay, let's realign the districts, realign the regions. And in my opinion, that is simply going from a northwest and a southwest to a west region. Geographically speaking, it makes a lot more sense because you have the city of Pittsburgh that is surrounded by the WPIAL on all sides. It's like Mount Oliver, which is surrounded by all sides of by the city of Pittsburgh. I believe that you should have a west region that encompasses both District 7, District 8, but then you also include District 10, District 9, and that would allow for more qualifiers to the state tournament. Now, the catch is that ain't all going to be WPIAL guys depending on how the brackets shake out, right? It's just like AA. So I think you take the AA model and you turn it into a AAA facing model, and you may have a regional tournament where the WPIAL qualifies 7 to that tournament. District 8 qualifies 2. District 10 qualifies 3. However you want to split up the numbers. And look, the PIAA has specific percentages that they use to determine the number of qualifiers. And that can't be overlooked. So the only way that it's actually going to move forward, because it's not going to happen in the current state, right? The WPIAL, it doesn't matter that pound for pound, per capita, however you want to call the metric, that the WPIAL is better than the rest of the state. That you can't just say that. You can't just stand there like Gandalf and say, you shall not pass. I mean, it doesn't work like that, right? There has to be another way. There has to be a smarter way to how we go about this. And it's not going to change based on the current situation. The only thing that's going to change is if we reorganized and redo how we get wrestlers to the state tournament. Because let's not forget, the state tournament, the only way you get to the state tournament is through filtrations, right? You go through, think about your Brita, right? You got your Brita water, and that filters out all the bad stuff, right? Well, in essence, the state tournament, before you get to the state tournament, it filters out the wrestlers that just don't make it, right? If we truly want to have the best wrestling tournament in the nation or the best wrestlers in the state being represented, you have to have better filtration devices in place. Regionally, it's not always comparative. The Southeast, comparatively speaking, is not as good as the Southwest. But the problem is the Southeast has over 60 schools in that region. So that's a problem, right? Especially when the PIAA looks at only numbers. So you have to find out another way to do it. Tomorrow is another PIAA Board of Directors meeting on the 23rd. So that's a big meeting because that would be the second reading, and the the Wrestling Steering Committee is going to have some proposals that they're going to put forward to see if it changes. But it's probably not going to change in this next 2-year cycle. That's probably not going to happen. Could it? Yeah, sure, it could, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic I think you and I talked about off air, Jeff, and I got a chance to talk at the WPIAL tournament with several coaches, including like Jose Martinez in North Hills, Dan Hecker at North Allegheny, just about the proposal and being able to basically entice the Northwest region to do something like this, to be able to say, hey, you can bring 5 guys, maybe, to the regional tournament. We'll bring 6, whatever the case might be, to make a 16-man bracket, and obviously District 8, District 4, all the different districts that are in there. But they now have an opportunity to, and then obviously you advance 4, maybe 5 guys to the state tournament. Now you have a chance to get more guys to the state tournament than your 3. But you also got to look at the other side, where the Northwest has to obviously open up their eyes and say, Southwest has been dominant in AAA at the state tournament. Are we actually going to get our 3 that we normally get to the state tournament? Or are we then now going to not get our 3 guys there? We may only get 1 or 2. Yeah, we could get a weight class with 4, but are we going to lose more than we get to the state tournament? So how do you convince that Northwest region that this is actually better for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, no doubt. It's hard, and when you have a district like the WPIAL that just the talent and the depth is so deep, it's hard to convince a district or a region like the Northwest and District 10 and District 6 and all those districts to say, hey, come wrestle with us because we won another qualifier and we're better than you, so we're going to beat you out for that spot. But I also think you got to look at some of those coaches and those programs that are also upset about it, right? They know how good the WPIAL is. The thing about Pennsylvania wrestling is everybody is keenly aware of where the talent is, and they're very aware of how that talent is kind of broken up and spread out across the state. So, while it may be easy for somebody from District 10 to say, well, no, let's stay with the Northwest because we have a better chance of getting qualifiers through. I don't know necessarily if you do anything that's going to entice them, right? My proposal is simply to break it down into 4 regions. So you have a Southeast region, which is just District 1. District 1 has 61 schools. They get 5 qualifiers to the state tournament. The next would be Northeast region. The Northeast I would have is District 2, District 4, District 11, District 12. So split up District 4 and District 9. District 4, back when you and I wrestled, was in the Northeast region. And then District 4 combined with District 9 to form a weird quasi-district in wrestling. I'm saying you move District 4 with 5 schools back over to Northeast. That's 56 schools in the Northeast, 5 state qualifiers for 5 different districts. District 2 has 12 schools, District 4 has 5, District 11 has 20, and District 12 has 19. This is only in AAA. So 5 qualifiers in the Southeast, 5 in the Northeast, 61 schools, 56 schools. Then you go what I call as a central region. District 3 has 58 schools. District 6 has 7 schools. My argument for the central region is this. When you look at the Mid-Penn Conference, which is the conference that I wrestled in with Central Dauphin is in the Mid-Penn Conference, but they wrestle State College and Mifflin County, who are in the same conference. So you have 2 of those 7 teams that are already competing with District 3 teams. Geographically speaking, it's pretty even where it makes sense, where you have Center County all the way down to kind of Chambersburg, Waynesboro area. You wouldn't have to travel further if you're in one of those districts necessarily, and you already are traveling this far. So the central region would have 65 schools, 5 state qualifiers. That would have the most schools out of all the 4 regions that I proposed. The West region would have the least amount of schools. It has 52. That's District 7, District 8, District 9, and District 10. District 10 only has 5 schools in AAA in the next cycle. District 9 has 3. District 8 has 6. So when you look at that and you say, well, how does that make sense? The West region is completely depleted, right? It actually, based on the percentages that the PIAA puts out, the Northwest region currently should only get 2 qualifiers. But there's an addendum in there that says no region should have less than 3 qualifiers to the state tournament. So it's kind of contradicting, right? Because you have one percentage that says, well, based on the percentage of number of schools, they should only get 2 qualifiers. But you also have a clause in there that says no region should qualify less than 3. So I think the West is just the West region should just be the West, right? From Erie all the way down to Greene County, you meet in the middle. That's my proposal. Whether that gets any steam or any headway, who knows? But we'll find out hopefully in the next couple of weeks here.
And really, it's how it should be, right, Jeff? I mean, 4 regions, 5 qualifiers each, and let's call it a day.
It's clean, right? It's. Yeah. I mean, the PIAA loves clean, and there's nothing that's more clean and even about this. Is there a little bit of difference between 52 and 65? Yeah, sure there is, but you give each region 5 qualifiers. These are all split up based on populations and based on number of schools and districts. Look, I think it makes the most sense, but there's barriers and roadblocks there. One, District 8, 9, and 10 have to be willing to reform a region with District 7 in the West. District 4 has got to be welcomed back into the Northeast. District 6 would have to be welcomed into the Central region, or the South Central region. And here's the thing. Those self-contained districts, those self-contained regional tournaments like District 7, like District 1, like District 3, those are hard to come by, right? Those are things that you want to have and keep, because you're thinking, well, heck yeah, I want to stay in my own region. It's a self-contained region. Why would I not? For the West, for District 7, this would be huge for them, because for the first time since forever, they're going to have to compete with other districts to get to the state tournament. As previously, it was only us, right? Only the WPIAL goes to the state tournament from that district tournament. So it changes up things. It leaves with only one self-contained region. That's the Southeast, because by population size, the Southeast is huge. Competition level, they're not that great, not comparatively speaking to the West, to Southwest. Yep. and those teams. And per capita, District 11 only has 20 schools, but they make up the second most state medalists, right? The WPIAL only will have 38 schools in the next 2-year cycle in AAA. So those numbers are getting smaller and smaller. So I think the time is now to start looking at, hey, let's consolidate. Let's not go through just a district tournament to get to the state tournament. We have to bring in other districts in order to have it equal. You go from having 3 to potentially 5 state qualifiers if you're the WPIAL. Now, will every bracket be, hey, all 5 guys that qualify are WPIAL guys? Absolutely not. You're going to have guys from, District 9, District 10 that are going to punch through. You may even have somebody from District 8 potentially that gets through. But it allows that opportunity to say, hey, let's give the chance for these wrestlers to qualify for the state tournament, because that's ultimately what it's about, is getting the best wrestlers to the state tournament within the parameters that the PIAA has set.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, the Northwest getting an extra qualifier right now for something where they're not even able to, if not, they'd be getting 2 and the WPIAL will be getting 4 based on the numbers of how it works. But the way they have it set up with that, you must have 3. It really takes away from the WPIAL. And I would agree with you. I mean, there's going to be weight classes, though, where the WPIAL may get all 5. There could be other ones they only get 2 or 3, because of the fact that Northwest might be strong. You're talking about Cathedral Prep is in there. Cathedral Prep brings a heck of a team every single year to the state tournament. So they don't bring that just because there's no competition up there. I mean, yes, there's less competition, but they also represent themselves very well in Hershey. So, that's just one team, and you have other standout individuals that come through there. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it makes too much sense, kind of like almost like we talked about for the WPIAL for how many years now, saying, and you clowned on me about, 5 wrestlers are coming out of section instead of 4, but like, why wouldn't we have a 16-man bracket, especially when you only take 4 guys to the state tournament? It's too clean, it's too easy. Well, this just seems like it's too clean and too easy, so it doesn't sound like it'll work.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate your support in this, and
I agree with you completely. I think that's how it should go. I mean, it sounds too easy, Jeff, I guess is the way I'm saying it.
No, and it does, and there are some roadblocks, as I mentioned. You got to get those guys, those folks to agree on it, but you also have to have, a change in the PIAA's percentage points to say, okay, well, here's a district that, based on the percentages, based on my proposal that is what I put forward here. The WPIAL would only, or the West would only get 4, the Central would get 5, but it's by like 0.02 of a percentage point. It's minuscule. It's nothing. Why not make it? You made an addendum to say, well, no team should have less than, or no region should have less than 3. So why not just say all regions should have 5, and you keep the regions kind of equally balanced, right? In terms of schools, we're talking about a difference of less than 20 schools, right? 52 and 65 is the difference. When all the other regions, you have 61, 56, 65, 52. That's pretty
close.
Pretty even, right? And I think it's fair, and I think it makes too much sense, like you said. Now, there may be arguments to say, okay, well, how about this? how about let's move District 6 over to the West as well? I mean, District 6 may say, well, no way, let's go through the central region with District 3. But you do that, and now District 6 comes over with their 7 schools. That makes it 59 schools in the West, right? So, but you also have then, up to, you would have 6 different districts, 5 different districts in one region. So think of it like the super regions, right? The super regions last year, everyone said, well, they sucked because of this and that and all the other. But the super regions would have been okay if we qualified 7 guys, to the state tournament. In my opinion, the super regions, if you would have said of those best wrestlers in the super region, the West and the East, if you said the best 10 from each bracket go, like, okay, I'm okay with that. So while the super regions sucked for a number of reasons, they kind of made sense in the fact that you're kind of filtering out some of these districts and regions before you get to Hershey. Now, albeit last year it was, you only sent 4 from each one, and you only had 8 guys in a medal round bracket. So that was obviously terrible when you look at COVID, but it kind of made sense a little bit. And you look at how the regions are broken up now, geographically they don't make sense, and competitively they don't make sense. So this, I think, adds a little bit of sense into it, but as you said, it probably won't work because it makes sense.
On the AA side, would you make any changes on that end? I know with the WPIAL getting more teams, Southwest region will get an extra qualifier. So, good news on the other side of things, but do you see anything changing there with kind of a similar approach?
I think there could be some changes because now that region in particular, the Southwest, if you will, is completely like just loaded. I mean, has got over 70 schools, I think it is now total. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it's a lot. Whereas the Northwest is losing numbers between District 9 and District 10. So I wouldn't be opposed to looking at maybe moving around some of the districts between the West or Southwest and the Northwest. But here's the thing. You don't want to go backwards and say, hey, let's make 5 regions in AA. Yep. And I think 4 regions in AA is perfect. You never have guys wrestling in the first round. Like we saw, with the Southwest, we saw Jack Pletcher and Dylan Evans wrestling in the first round. Those 2 guys, now this just played into it so perfectly because Dylan Evans ended up finishing first. Jack Pletcher ended up finishing in third. And they wrestled in the first round of the state tournament. That, to me, is a big red flag and says, hey, what are we doing here wrong? And what's wrong is we have an uneven number of regions in AAA. So in AA, I would say you have to try to competitively or balance the regions out a little bit more, but you're not really, unless you start bringing teams from the East over to the West and crossing, a pretty large distance, there's really not a whole lot you're going to be able to do. I think District 5 potentially could go in a different region, maybe to the Northwest, I don't know. Do you break up the District 3? And I don't know. There's a lot of different options, but I think AA works. So if it ain't broke, why fix it? But AAA is broken, so that needs to be addressed. But we'll see. I mean, because if you do one, you got to do the other. You got to kind of make it somewhat consistent across the board.
Jeff, you brought up a good point going back to your super regions from a year ago where it didn't work, obviously, because you just took 4 from each one and basically you were a state medalist. And obviously, many in weight classes, the West was stronger. It could have been a couple weight classes, the East was stronger, but you brought up a good point. Like, you're 10 best in the West, you're 10 best in the East. Take your top 20 to to the state tournament to see who finishes out as the top 8 wrestlers. That's probably, looking back on it, it's probably the way to figure out your top 8 guys, because then you're going to get 10 guys going to the tournament where you can say you're taking 10 with an opportunity to finish in the top 8. Where if you do have the top 8 guys in the West, you do it. So you end up figuring it out where, I don't know how big of a bracket you would go into the super regions or anything like that, but I mean, that's almost in a way like you wrestle to the top 10. Now you're going to get rematches. You're going to have guys wrestling back-to-back weeks, and that kind of takes maybe the excitement away from wrestling a guy from the other side of the state or, other part where you may only see him once a year at the state tournament. Now you see him back-to-back weeks, but it's an interesting concept in the fact that you do really get your top 8 if you take 10 from each side of the state.
Look at how and I'm not saying this is correct, but look at how the state brackets are set up for basketball and like football, right? You keep on playing in those regional rounds, if you will, those until you get to the to Hershey essentially, and in theory the 2 best teams make it there, but you often have the 2 best teams from one district playing in the finals because you're not going to have the same guys in the same district on the same side. So like you look at the super region in theory, if you do it right, if you split the state down the middle, right, and you say District 6, District 7, District 8, District 9, District 10, okay, you wrestle and you give us your 8 best. Or 10 best. I would say 8 because I'm a fan of the 16-man bracket, but it is what it is.
I am too, but that's, yeah.
I mean, maybe we should go back to the 16 and make it just cleaner. But you have those, you split the state down the middle, right? And you say District 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You wrestle a super regional tournament or a regional, let's just call it a regional tournament. We don't need to add super into it. You wrestle a regional tournament, and your top 8 guys make it to the state tournament. Okay. Then you, on the other side, you have District 3, you have District 4, you have District 11, 12, and 2, right? I think that's right. Yeah. All those.
1, right?
And 1, District 1, right? And you split it down there and you say, all right, your best 8 guys. Now, the caveat is population size, it's not even, right? When you cut down the middle, the West has significantly less population than the East, right? You got Harrisburg, Philly, and the Scranton area, which have more population sizes than the West does with Pittsburgh and Erie. So that's a problem, right? But again, if we're looking at it, makes sense to me, right? You have a true West, best from the West, best from the East that come in, and you have the 8 best from each one. And I think it's a cool idea. That'll never happen unless we have another global pandemic, which
let's hope that never happens.
That hopefully never happen in our lifetime. But I think we can get the next best thing. I think we can rearrange the regions to make it a little bit more feasible and a little bit more fair, and just allow the opportunity. Give the opportunity to wrestle these guys like the guys from the WPIAL, give them a chance to wrestle with these other districts to say, hey, let's give them a chance to wrestle to see if they are worthy of going to the state tournament. Because that's really what it is. It's a test to say, if you think you're as good as you are, then you're going to wrestle through some of these other districts in order to get to the state tournament. Because the WPIAL is taking a step back by doing this. The WPIAL is saying, you know what, we're giving up our self-contained district and saying, let's join another region, maybe reform another region altogether. So they're stepping back and saying, they're essentially being a little bit vulnerable and saying, let's open it up to other districts before we even get to the state tournament, full well knowing that you may not always get some of your best guys through because some other guys from District 10 or District 9 may be better. There's some weight classes this year, like 172 in the WPIAL, it wasn't that strong. But we had 3 guys medal, right? So you look at the state bracket and you say, man, like that's a weaker weight class in our region, and they still ended up getting 3 on the podium. Okay, well now let's look at some of the other guys here and to say maybe we can do it a different way. I don't know if it's if I was a betting man, I would say we're going to keep things as they are and that nothing's going to change, but we at least got to go down with a fight. We got to go down swinging a little bit. So that's my version of swinging, is saying, hey, let's do this. And the funny thing is, I proposed this 6 years ago. Norm Polosic proposed this a few years back, and it wasn't the right time. I think now is the time to do it because of the shift in population sizes and the shift in qualifiers. I think now is the time to address it and at least evaluate it and say, hey, can we get some folks on board for this? Because ultimately it's going to make the state wrestling tournament that much better, and the state of Pennsylvania that much better.
I agree. Get your best guys there and make it the most competitive tournament, which is what you want each and every year. I guess the other thing that topic has come up, which I don't agree with, but it's, well, let's just add a couple more qualifiers, right? What's a couple more matches to the state tournament?
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
No, 20 to me is, in my opinion, a little bit too much. I think, I agree with you. I think a 16-man bracket is what it should be at the state tournament. Never really was a fan of it going to 20, but the fact that it's 20, it's never going backwards. It's always going to be at least 20. I'd hope they wouldn't add a couple more wrestlers to that mix. It makes it too watered down at that point. I mean, every wrestler going to state tournament is well deserving. I shouldn't say that, but it just makes it too much at that point, in my opinion.
Well, and to be honest, people say, well, how many matches is that? It's a total of this matches. We can run it in this amount of time. People don't understand the PIAA is not going to increase the bracket size just to appease some upset people in the WPIAL. Like that ain't happening.
Yeah.
But why would we? And I'm on board with you. And Brad Wilson and I had a long talk about this at one point. And it's like, if we had a single class tournament, right, like California does, and we only have one single class, yeah, our bracket should be larger. But we don't. We have two classes, and we have 20 wrestlers. So we have 40 wrestlers in one weight class that make it to state tournament. One's in double A, or 20 in double A, 20 are in triple A. So there's no way. There's two things. I don't think we're going to go back to 16, although I think many people in places of influence want to go back to 16. I don't see it happening. Two, let's not forget, we're trying to sanction girls wrestling, okay? If you want to sanction girls wrestling, you've got to keep them on equal footing. So what's this PIAA going to do? They're probably going to run it in conjunction with the boys state tournament. You can't make a bigger bracket for the boys and then come back and say the girls, well, you only get 8, right? You're only going to have qualify 8 to the state tournament. That's the one thing I know about the PIAA is it's got to be fair across the board. And if the boys are wrestling in the Giant Center, the girls are wrestling in the Giant Center. That you cannot have. It's like the NCAA tournament. I think it was last year for the basketball tournament. They showed the pictures of like the men's weight room, and it was all like these pristine, nice, huge weight rooms. And then the girls' basketball weight room was like nothing. It was basically like a rack and like some yoga mats. That was it. And people are like, what the hell? Like, are we not good enough to have that stuff? Or are we not? And you can't have that, right? That's whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's not good optics for an organization that's supposed to be impartial and fair. So I don't think brackets getting bigger is a solution, and I actually don't think it's a possibility. So that's not going to happen. You can pitch it all you want, but I don't think it's going to happen. And quite frankly, I don't think my proposal's likely going to happen. But it's probably the most realistic one if there is ever one, and that's not being arrogant, or I just think having a little bit of experience in kind of both those worlds and talking with some folks on both sides, I think that's probably the most realistic way. But even that is a long shot.
So the final verdict for that, Jeff, when is that expected? I know you said there's a meeting tomorrow. Is there one more after that?
Yeah, I'm going to have to, I think it's May. I'm going to have to look at the board of directors meetings. So tomorrow, the 23rd, is the next one. And I think May is the final. So it's got to pass on 3 readings, and it's already passed 1 reading. So, but they went back and got, the Wrestling Steering Committee, which is a subcommittee within the PIAA, will look at it and give their recommendation. So if the Wrestling Steering Committee comes back and says, hey, this is what I'm proposing, this is what we'd like to do, the PIAA typically listens to their steering committees, but not always. But again, that steering committee comprises people from all over the state. So if you have somebody from District 6 who's on the steering committee who's like, whoa, no way, I'm not on board with that, you could have problems, right? So I don't know. We'll find out. We'll keep you posted on what's to come, but it's not set in stone yet. But it's unless something happens, it's gonna be.
It'll be interesting to see, and we'll be closely monitoring, and obviously stay with the PA Powers. We'll make sure to update you as far as how things go. Not only tomorrow, but throughout the rest of this process. And I know it's probably a longer show than we ever expected, Jeff, but we knew this topic would be one that would be a lot of discussion. So, biggest thing though, let's look forward to the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic starting at 6 o'clock on Friday at Peters Township for the WPIAL side, and the Team PA hitting the mats at 8 o'clock. Stick with PA Power throughout the entire week. We got interviews coming up. We got previews. We got press conferences. You got anything and everything in regards to the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic. We'll have it for you here, and we're excited to break it all down for you as the scholastic season comes to a close.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. And last year was a ton of fun. With Pennsylvania winning, I don't know if we're going to be able to replicate that, but you never know. Like I said, there's always something that surprises you, whether it's a big fall or it's an injury default or something that swings the match. So yeah, it's come to Peter. If you're in the area, there's no reason why you shouldn't be at Peters Township. And you can purchase tickets in advance. You can go to the National Wrestling Coaches Association website. There's a link on our website. If you go to papowerwrestling.com and click on the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic, you'll be able to find out where you can buy tickets. But if you're a wrestling fan, I think you need to show out and show up, especially a year after COVID. Let's pack that place and have it, the best environment ever.
Absolutely. Totally agree. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for watching and listening in to WarUp on the WPIL.